Do you ever find yourself saying anything shocking to your kids, or at least words that they are shocked by? Well, in the New Testament book of James, he pens some words that are shocking to us as believers. What does this have to do with raising kids? We're going to talk about that today as we continue looking at how we can raise kids to make the first and later the second great commandment the central focus of their lives. Stay tuned.
If your desire is to become spiritually stronger, emotionally healthier, and relationally smarter, you're at the right place. Speaker and writer Stephanie Smith inspires and equips you to achieve these three key aims. If you're a parent, you'll also learn how to raise empowered kids, ready for adulthood. Let's get started.
Welcome back. Hey, whether you're a mom or a dad who's in the midst of trying to keep toddlers alive for another day, or you have middle school or elementary school kids, maybe you're in the throes of dealing with those wonderful adolescent years. Maybe you're a grandparent, or maybe you're not a parent at all, but you are engaged or care about upcoming generations and how we can raise and mentor them to be fully engaged in God's grand story for their life. Welcome to the podcast. If you don't know already, I have a weekly newsletter, High Impact, that you can sign up for on the website stephaniepresents.com. And if you ever decide it's just something that's not meeting any of your needs, well, it's very easy to unsubscribe. Although I don't think that will probably be the case, but it does happen occasionally. So while you're listening, if you're not in the midst of maybe running a jog or running errands and you have a chance to pull out your phone or to pull out your laptop, then go to the website and then it's just a few easy clicks there and you can sign up for that weekly newsletter. Hey, there is a lot of stress and tension in life, right? We don't have to go searching for it. I have yet to meet a person who said, life's just been so easy for so long, and I'm just really missing what it felt like to ever have any kind of stress or tension. That's just not life. But all tension is not bad tension. And there's a good tension that we need to embrace and to accept that it is part of life and we're not going to escape it. So we might as well embrace it. And that is not the tension between right and wrong and good and evil. It's the tension between two truths that hold each other in balance. And part of that is what we're going to be looking at today. When Jesus summarized all of life in two commandments, that's something that we need to sit up and pay attention to. I mean, what a great summary job was that. And the first one was to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, and all our strength, the central focus of life. So easy to say and difficult to do. Not just because we have a nature that can pull us in another direction, but sometimes it's difficult because we don't really have clarity about what does that actually look like? I mean, how do we make that real and present in our everyday life? How does that connect if I'm the mom trying to chase a toddler around and we've got to run errands and all I'm trying to do is just find two matching shoes or at least close to matching shoes? Or how does that relate when I have a middle schooler who seems to be, cranking along okay, but I'm a little concerned about maybe some of their attitude or some of the friend choices they seem to be drifting to. Or I'm in the midst of those throes of adolescent years and just wondering how do I make decisions and how do I help to guide this person who is very close to adulthood, but in chronological age, but does not seem to be getting very close there, maybe mentally or emotionally. Well, that's part of what we're diving into in this series, trying to break this down and to make it more real and tangible and something that we can actually take action on as individuals, but specifically as parents and caregivers as we raise and mentor kids. We've been talking about how we can look at our capacities in light of this first great commandment. And we have looked at the fact that Capacity is not dependent on and it's not determined by confidence. There can be a connection between capacity and confidence, but there doesn't have to be a connection between those two things. Sometimes people are very confident in things that honestly they're just not really that capable in. Ever been there, done that, or been around somebody else who has? And sometimes people are incredibly insecure in areas where they actually have tremendous capacity. So we talked about that a couple of episodes back. We also looked at last time, we looked at developing our who capacity, our character, how we show up in life, and looking at the fact that in order to do that, that takes work. It's the process of transformation. It doesn't happen by default. Environment is not what creates character. There's work and energy involved in that. And today, what we're going to be looking at is developing do capacity. And you might be thinking, okay, who and do, I mean, really, what is all this? Well, that goes to the tension aspect of life. And that's nothing new. As a matter of fact, we can turn to a New Testament book of James, an epistle that's there towards the end of the New Testament. And we read that this tension is basically showing up with adults back some 2,000 years ago. How James opens this chapter is not something you are going to find on a greeting card today. He opens after he introduces himself by saying, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." Okay, you're just not gonna find a card that's got that opening on it. Hey, friend, you know what? Be grateful that you're going through this struggle because you know what the end result is? You're going to be steadfast. At least I've never seen a card like that. But James goes on to write about how we view trials. And then what he gets into is he gets into being a little bit more specific about how we show up with our attitudes. He addresses anger, he addresses arrogance, he addresses somebody who doesn't control their tongue, and he addresses some of these things just in the very first chapter of this short book. And then he goes on, and in chapter 2, he speaks to these two factions that had developed in the early church. And you kind of had the who and the do factions. The who factions were people that basically said, because we have a belief system, we're good. We're Christians. We have this solid faith. We have this belief system. Okay, that's pretty much all we need. We're good. Go away. Leave us alone. Then you had the do faction, and these were action oriented people that said, no, it's not enough to have a belief system. You have to be doing something. You have to be showing up in a way that your faith is evident through your actions. And there's discussion here about feeding the hungry, about clothing the poor, and other things along these lines. It's like you have to make that who-ness real through your do-ness. Now, James isn't using those words who and do, but I'm using those as we talk about our children's capacities because as parents, we have the responsibility to be intentional to help develop both their who capacities, their character, and their do capacities, their skill set by which their who-ness shows up in life. Now, James does not write to these people and say, oh, you know what? You have your way of thinking and you have your belief system. Y'all just agree to disagree. He does not take that position. He wades into these tumultuous waters and he says, look, here's the thing. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So, also, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. And then he goes on and he writes some words a few verses down that are really pretty sobering and shocking even. And he's writing in response to people that say, "Oh, hey, you know what? You have your works, I have my faith, so, basically leave me alone." He says to them, "You believe that God is one. You do well." In other words, congratulations, you have a right belief. Good for you. Not challenging that. Matter of fact, I'm going to affirm that your belief there is correct. But then he goes on and he pens these words: even the demons believe and shudder. Have you ever had somebody say to you, "Awesome, it's just great you have that right theological belief"? Guess what? The demons think the same thing. I mean, that's really what he's saying here. But he takes it a step further by saying they not only believe that there is a God and there's one God, but they are live in awe of that. Not respect, not a holy respect, but they live in fear because they know that's true. One of the things that I think has kind of tended to happen culturally in our Christian faith is that we have become so focused on belief systems. Do they have the right beliefs? And we have forgotten that it's not just beliefs, a right theology that gets people fully engaged in this life that God has given us. It's not just about, okay, I have the right belief system, check all the boxes there, I'm good. And James is basically saying here, you can have all your who-ness, you can have your right belief system, but you need to also be out doing things with that flow out of that belief system. And if not, well, guess what? The demons believe that there is a God, but you don't see them out acting that out in a positive way and doing good in the world. Of course not. We can talk to our kids and read them all the Bible stories and have them memorize verses and take them to listen to speakers and all those different things, for example, about the importance of kindness. But if they're not in situations where they're actually having to show up and do acts of kindness, it's just remaining in their mind. It's not becoming part of who they actually, because this connection between who and do goes both ways. It's not like, oh, I'm who over here, but then what I do is over here. And it's through both of those things that we become an integrated person. Now, we do need both because the truth is you can have people who do all kinds of good things externally, but they are not a good person with their character. We can be motivated to do even good things, but for wrong reasons. So that's why I've talked about who and developing the who character of our children first. But it's not enough to stop there. We also need to be intentional to help them to identify and develop skill sets about how they are going to actually show up in the world and do things to make a difference, do things to live out that character. Now, this looks different at different ages for our kids, but if we go in with the mindset that we are intentionally looking at both, we're going to be looking at how are we developing and helping them to develop their who-ness, their character, and then also how are we developing their skill set so that they even have skills to be able to show up in the world. They need to be able to learn how to engage with other people. And this is going to look different at different ages, but it is a skill set that we all need to have in order to show up well in this life. They're going to need basic skills on how to live in this world. The kid doesn't know how to run a wash machine and a dryer and wash their own clothes by the time they graduate from high school. There are basic skills that kids need to have in our culture by the time that they are certain ages or they graduate from high school. They need to have so they don't end up in a position where not only can they not help other people, but they're dependent on other people in ways that's not good. Teaching them to cook isn't just for their own survival, although that's a good enough reason for that. But also, what about if they know how to do meal planning? They know how to do grocery shopping, they know how to do cooking, so that when they go out into their adult life, they're not just able to take care of themselves, but they're able to put together a meal and start the practice of hospitality. And that's not just for girls, that's for guys just as much. Also, somebody needs to know how to change a tire. Again, for their own benefit, but also to be able to have that skill set because someday you may come across somebody else. And that's a very practical way that you can show up. Just like James talks about these very practical ways. Hey, you see somebody who needs clothing? Okay. You see somebody who is cold and needs a coat or needs a shelter? We're talking about very real, practical human needs. When we have the perspective of living all of life with the first two great commandments as our focus, then we can see the time that it takes to work with a kid in the kitchen, to teach them how to cook. And yeah, it's going to be messy and it takes more time and it's going to require more out of you than just doing it yourself. We teach them how to clean house. We teach them how to take care of their own laundry, how to handle money, how to do some basic car maintenance, how to do any number of skills that are needed in this life. Then we're not just doing stuff that's earthly. We're actually doing things with that lens that says we are preparing them to be able to do things in this world for themselves and for others so that they can actually live out this first great commandment. And it's not a waste of our time. We're actually equipping them with a do skill set so that they can live out this first great commandment and actually also be able to live out that second one by being skilled to love their neighbor. All right, my friend, that's going to wrap us up for today. Hey, again, if you haven't already, make sure you visit the website, sign up for the newsletter, and also I do speaking engagements. I travel all around the country, also will travel internationally and speak to women's events and also for parenting conferences as well. So check out those engagements there on the website as well. Hey, remember this wherever you are in your season of parenting or impacting upcoming generations, you have an impact that is immeasurable, it's eternal, and it is irreplaceable. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Visit the website stephaniepresents.com and sign up for High Impact to join the mission of building spiritually strong, emotionally healthy, and relationally smart women and families. You can also book Stephanie to speak at your event and check out additional resources. Together, we can invite and equip generations to engage fully in God's grand story.